order the City Council meeting for January 14th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning? Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer? Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Motion to excuse our absent members.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hollinger, second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Tonight's invocation will be led by Chaplain John Powers from Ohio Wesleyan University, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Beloved God of every faith and face, we pause to ponder what it means to be community within this council room. As we approach the day, we celebrate the wisdom wrought by Martin Luther King to make the word beloved real to us in how we think and feel and act and speak, in how we treat those whom we do not like, in how we deal with those who hate us more. How do you deal with us, dear patient God, when we insist that only we are right and call on you to smite all other souls? We pause to ponder what it means to be community within this council room and humbly yield to who you'd have us be. Shalom, Salam, Namaste, Amen.
The Pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chaplain Powers. Item 4 is the approval of the motion summary of the year-end meeting of council held December 20th, 2018, as recorded and transcribed. What is the wish of council?
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Keller, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Lynn, if you'll please read this into the record.
Acceptance of the motion summary of the Civil Service Commission meeting held on October 24th, 2018, as recorded and transcribed. Acceptance of the motion summary of the Sister City Advisory Board Committee meeting held on October 9th, 2018, as recorded and transcribed. Item C, resolution number 19-01, a resolution canceling the second regular meeting of City Council on May 27, 2019 due to the Memorial Day holiday and rescheduling the second regular meeting of City Council from December 23rd to December 19th, 2019.
What is the wish of council on the consent agenda?
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is time set aside for letters, petitions, and public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward at this time?
Good evening. My name is Bill Reitz, 675 Pollyanna Drive. I represent a grassroots committee. I'm the chairperson of the Ruth B. Hayes Heritage Fund. It's a special project fund set up with the Delaware County Foundation. We have a purpose, and y'all can take one of these home. I'll leave one with you. But sort of our mission statement. It's a project to bring appropriate recognition to and educate the community about the 19th President of the United States and Delaware's own, or Delaware's native son, Rutherford B. Hayes. Our goal is across the corner here at the southwest corner of William Street and Sandusky to erect a statue, refurbish the fountain on the plaza, and also provide flagpoles, 2 flagpoles, lighting, and an interpretive panel about our native son. When is this going to happen? October 4th, 2019. That's the 197th anniversary of Hayes' birth here on East William Street. That is the first Friday of October, so we won't be coming to you for any kind of permit to close off the streets. We'll just dovetail in with First Friday, and Debbie Bibler, First Friday Group Main Street, Delaware. How is this going to happen? When I say it's going to happen, it's simple. We're out seeking donations, fundraising from the Delaware community and beyond. It's been amazing the response we've had. Currently, Zanesville, Ohio sculptor Alan Cottrell is at work now, working on the statue. Fundraising, we have in the fund, the Delaware County Foundation, 41% of the project cost. If you throw in the pledges that have been committed to come to the fund in 2019, we're at 57% raised. And again, we want to make this a community-wide effort. The schools are going to be involved. Obviously, we've been at various locations around, but the key thing behind that is education. But just to give you an idea, we are where we need to be to bring Rutherford B. Hayes home. Our website, if you want more information on the president, his wife, his accomplishments, hayescomeshome.org. And at this time, I'm going to have the unofficial unveiling. This is a 24-inch scale model of what will appear on the corner. It will be a 7-foot bronze statue. This is the artist Alan Cottrell's design. It will stand 7 feet tall. It's life size and a quarter. He wasn't 7 foot tall as an individual, but the 4 sculptors we interviewed in this council chamber in July, all of them came with a life size and a quarter. I guess that's the going standard with sculptors. He will stand he'll be on a 28-inch high, 32-inch by 32-inch polished black granite pedestal with a 7-inch plinth, similar to what this is, so it'll be smaller on top of the pedestal. When everything's measured out, he'll be just under 10 feet, or the statue itself will be just under 10 feet. As you heard me say, it'll be lighting on the statue. The fountain obviously will be functioning, but that's where we stand currently. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I did want to come and let you guys know where the committee stands and what we've done to date. And by the way, we just started October on fundraising, and like I said, we got 41% in the fund. It's ready to be spent. So
Bill, explain to them the fountain, because the fountain that's sitting there today is going to be totally redone.
correct. A portion of the funds, and we're going to learn more about that at Wednesday's meeting, the fountain specifics. But the fountain itself will not change in design. It will just be functioning. We're going to, instead of it's about a 3-foot deep fountain, it's going to be raised up. It'll be more of a bubbling fountain rather than a shooting fountain. I don't know what else to say because I'm not the fountain guy. But
Ted is.
yeah. I'd be happy to entertain any questions, but if not, I know you guys got a lot on your agenda.
Just real quickly, and I just acknowledge, obviously, the hard work that Bill has put into this, and Carolyn's on that committee, and a number of other people. The city's been involved in this for the last few years. We have a very cooperative property owner who is willing to provide an easement to the city where the statue will be placed. making it the city's responsibility really for the fountain and for the statue itself. So we are going to, this is going to require some legislative action from City Council because the donations are going to the Community Foundation. The Community Foundation can't pay those vendors or the invoices directly. So we have to supplement our budget, recognizing the money that's going to be raised by Bill and his committee. We also have to work out some finer points about the ongoing maintenance and whatnot. If somebody wants to set up a fund for maintenance, otherwise it would end up probably being the city's, but we do want to just establish kind of what the relationship is between the city and the committee. But really the good news is that there has been a tremendous amount of money. I mean, more than I think you anticipated at this point. And that's exciting because this has been something that's been kind of stalled for the last few years. And it's exciting to hear the report. So there will be legislation at probably City Council's next meeting in regards to a supplemental for the.
But while we do a supplemental, that money will be then reimbursed from the Community Foundation. And Bill, you have done an excellent job. I really, really appreciate you stepping up and taking the reins on this. So thank you.
My pleasure.
I don't have any.
Where's that small statue going?
Small statue, the question was asked, will go in the Ruth B. Hayes Center of American Political History, which we house in the second floor of the Willis Education Building on West Wayne. We also have, I didn't want to carry it because there's only one person, a bust. The bust will be the actual bust of the statue that will go in the atrium of Ruth B. Hayes High School, the only high school in the United States named after our native son. So yeah, we're gonna, this is now for programs like this, but the bust we currently have also that we've already purchased.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sorry, President.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Casey King. I reside at 84 Yorkshire Road here in Delaware, Ohio, and currently serve as chair of the Social Responsibility Committee for the Delaware County Community YMCA. I'm joined this evening by Kim Jordan in the back, who's the YMCA Chief Operating Officer and Interim President and CEO, as well as Matt Bruns, who serves as the Executive Director of the Delaware Community Center YMCA for the past 5.5 years. You have to excuse me, I'm battling a cold, so if I get in a cough and pass this over to Matt, that's why. On behalf of the YMCA of Central Ohio and the Delaware Community Center YMCA, thank you very much for providing us the opportunity to respond to recent concerns that were brought before this council on December 20th. The partnership between the YMCA and the City of Delaware spans 7.5 years. As the Y, we do not consider ourselves just another service provider, yet a part of the fabric of this wonderful community. We believe our partnership with the city has been built on mutual respect and shared goals to enrich the Delaware community, in particular its youth. As a resident of this community and someone who is integrally involved with the Y, it was disheartening to hear the serious allegations presented. As nearly 165-year-old registered 501c3 organization, we stand behind our history and our reputation as an exemplary organization. As you know, all of the Y's financial statements are public record, and their annual 990 is readily accessible through GuideStar. The Delaware YMCA financials are now being provided to the council that we have, and we invite you to review and question at any time. Additionally, we welcome the opportunity to present the correct details regarding the purchase of the swim team scoreboard that was purchased approximately 6 years ago. Additionally, end-of-year financials are being reconciled at the Y's Metropolitan Office, and swim team fundraising proceeds are in the process of being transferred to the team's accounts. Regarding swim team participant rates, in August of 2018, the YMCA of Central Ohio standardized fees for all 10 of its teams. Factors that can affect the swim teams include the number of coaches, practices, lanes used during practices, and the length of the season. Just to be clear, no one team is subsidizing for the others. 3 teams were not singled out. The fee calculated for all 10 teams is exactly the same based on the factors I've just noted. More importantly, the YMCA offers financial assistance when fees are needed. The Y makes every attempt to respond to questions and concerns in a timely manner. It's true that not every staff member can answer a question on the spot, as may need be, but rather seek counsel for appropriate response. However, the goal is always to assist. While we may not always have the ability to reach a resolution that all parties agree to, the YMCA carefully evaluates each decision to ensure we're following the best practices, maintaining safe environment, and that all the impacts on all members are taken into consideration. Finally, as council may be aware, the Delaware Riptide swim team recently had a staff change of their head coach. We have a new coach in place for the remainder of the season, and we're working hard to support her in her efforts to lead the team to a successful finish. In closing, the Delaware Community Center YMCA is something to be extremely proud of. To date, the Y has provided over $750,000 in support back to our community here in town. This is just one example of our citizens benefit from having the Y. We have realized growth and opportunities for children, teens, families, and adults. Delaware Recreation Services at the addition of the Ohio National Guard. I look forward to what the future holds for both Delaware and the city of Delaware and the YMCA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Thank you very much for your statement.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward on anything that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on down to the committee reports. Mr. Jones?
I have none, Mayor.
Ms. Keller?
I have none.
Mr. Rourke?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Hellinger?
I have none.
And neither do I. I missed a sister city meeting because I was out of town. So we'll do introductions. You do it, Susie?
Yes, it gives me pleasure to introduce Susie Daly. We had, Bill Reitz had the last name correct, first name incorrect. It switched. Susie Daly is our new Chief Information Officer. She comes to us from the Transportation Research Center that's in Marysville and comes highly regarded, highly recommended. And we're just excited that she's joined our team. She started last week, and she is busy meeting with directors, meeting with her staff, putting together an action plan. We've been without a CIO for the last year, so there's a lot of catch up, and I want to give her an opportunity to say hello to the council and to the community.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. My name is Susie Daly. Like you said, I came from Transportation Research Center. I've been in IT for about 25 years. I've run the gamut, so I think the city is a really good fit for me because of all the different departments that have all the locations that are going on. So I look forward to serving you and getting started learning everything, all the ins and outs of the city, meeting all of the people. As a citizen of Delaware myself, I was really excited to see the passion and kindness of all of the employees that are here and just what they're capable of doing with a lot of limited resources. So I'm really proud to be working here with all of the individuals that are here. I'm really excited to get started. So thank you for letting me have the time to introduce myself. And if anyone has any questions, or please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll do all that I can to help out.
Yeah, and don't be surprised during a council meeting if we need technical assistance, you might be called upon. So.
We've already warned her.
Yeah, okay, good.
Carolyn said my computer's not working. Sometimes I don't know if you're kidding or not.
Yeah,
I'll learn.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Thank you and welcome. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Item 9 is consideration of a resolution 1902, a resolution honoring the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What is the wish of council on this?
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. And that will be presented at the Martin Luther King breakfast, January 21st. Hope to see some of you there. I think Kyle's going.
Kyle, Jim, and you. I think are the three.
Anybody else want to join us? You're more than welcome to. Item 10 is considering resolution of 1903, a resolution appointing members to Terra Alta New Community Authority Board of Trustees.
Darren.
Madam Mayor, members of council, you may recall one of our meetings near the end of the year, we did approve the formation of the Terra Alta New Community Authority. As part of the revised code requirements for setting that up, we have to appoint our 4 board members within certain timeframes set in the code. Any later than I calculated it out, I think this is the meeting where we have to appoint them by based on the effective date of the ordinance and the timeframe. So the names you have there are the ones that the city proposes to appoint to the NCA. You will note that in our legislation, we indicate that as soon as people start living there, we will probably replace the city's members with people who actually live in the district. But right now, nothing's been built, so we just need to get some names on there to start it off. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
And these were somewhat randomly selected. I mean, we thought it made sense to have Councilman Browning on there because he represents, that's part of his ward. But for all intents and purposes, this board will be, won't be a functioning board until actually they start construction out there and actually have to start levying the actual millage charge. So, but we needed for purposes of the revised code, at least to provide these. But these can be changed if you want to see different names on there, that's fine. But
There wasn't a lot of competition that we identified for people who wanted to be on it, so we had to get the names in by the end of the deadline.
Move for approval of resolution 19-03.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Keller, second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. A little early for this meeting, so.
he can go with.
We'll have 7:20. Well,
I mean, you might not have it anyway, if you
Go
want to read it.
but we're going to table 11 and 12.
It's up to you, but probably, yes.
So if you want to read them in, we'll just go ahead and table them.
Ordinance number 18-118, an ordinance for Fahey Bank Company approving a combined preliminary and final development plan for Fahey Bank on approximately 0.81 acres on property zone B3 Community Business District and located at 75 West William Street. An ordinance number 18-119, an ordinance for Fahey Bank Company approving a conditional use permit for Fahey Bank on approximately 0.81 acres on property zone B3 Community Business District and located at 75 West William Street.
Madam Mayor, just for the sake of everyone who might be in the audience and interested in this, I might want to give you a little background on what's going on here. We received communication today that the applicant has had some major high-level personnel changes in their department, and they're not ready to move forward. So they are requesting that this project be tabled till the February 11th meeting. Procedurally, it's up to you. You can table to that meeting. You could table it indefinitely. Either one can be picked back up. Another thing I wanted to point out is you can cancel that public hearing if you like. If they're going to know by the end of the week kind of what their plan is to proceed. So they'll let us know if they do want to move forward with February 11th. On our next agenda, the second meeting in January, we would have another consent agenda item resetting that public hearing for the 11th. If they're not ready to go forward, you obviously wouldn't see that, and we'd probably have to table that the legislation again, or just withdraw it. But it's totally up to you as to whether you want to have the public hearing tonight. And then I don't know if it's worth it since they pulled it, but it's totally up to you. So you can treat those both as tabled, or you can table one and have the hearing. So I can answer any questions you might have about the process. And Jordan is pretty familiar with what went on today as well.
I think we just table them. I think it makes more sense to do it indefinitely rather than set the date, just in case come Friday they need a different date.
And
We can
there
still
used to
pull
be a
them off.
sense that indefinitely meant it was killed. It doesn't. We would just make a motion to pull it back off the table. And I think you're right. If they get back to us by the end of the week and they say, we would like to go on the 11th, at the second meeting in January, we can do the consent agenda item to set the hearing for February, and you can pull it off the table for February. So we can make it happen that way as well.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Do we,
I'm just curious if we have any members of the public that came to speak about it, that maybe we could allow them to, so that in case they can't come back. I don't know.
Well, I just hate for, if they have anything to say, what the people aren't being here from Fahey Bank. They're the ones that need to hear it as well as us. So I hate to. I got some heads nodding up and down. So we'll just let you know when it does happen, I guess.
So I make a motion to table, what ordinance 18-118 and 18-119.
Yes.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mrs. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion is carried. Okay. We can do. Well, if you read 13 and 14, we can talk about it and then go back and open up the public hearing. So ordinance 18-120 and 18-121.
Ordinance number 18-120, an ordinance for Nutter Company LLC approving a conditional use permit for Blue Sky Car Wash on approximately 1.28 acres on property zoned A1 PMU Agricultural District with a planned mixed-use overlay district and located on Lot 2 of the Coglan's Crossing development. And ordinance number 18-121, an ordinance for Nutter Company LLC approving a combined preliminary and final development plan for Blue Sky Car Wash on approximately 1.28 acres on property zoned A1 PMU Agricultural District with a planned mixed-use overlay district and located on Lot 2 of the Coglan's Crossing development.
All right. I'll be filling in for Dave tonight, so bear with me. Madam Mayor and members of council, this is an outlot in Coglan's Crossing development east of US 23 and north of Meeker Way on approximately 1.28 acres. The applicant is proposing a 5,560 square foot car wash and will need to meet very specific standards from the approved development text for the requested conditional use permit and combined preliminary and final development plan. Per the approved development text, a car wash will need to be an accessory use to a principal use, but as the proposal here is a standalone building and the primary use, a conditional use permit is required. In addition, this shall be the only car wash permitted within the Coglan's Crossing development. This site, as you can see here on the map, is between the two northern traffic signals into Coglan's Crossing, just east of US 23. A bike path will be located on the east side of the Spine Road per the development text. That'll be along here. And then as you can see here, the proposed car wash would have one curb cut from the Spine Road, and the developer shall execute a cross-access agreement for the properties to the north and south, as we can see here. The car wash will have a counterclockwise orientation with 28 parking spaces. Representatives of Blue Sky and the Nutter family have been very good to work with throughout the development process as we've gone through several iterations of the building's design, as the applicant is proposing a building design above their standard Blue Sky car wash in order to meet the vision of Coglan's Crossing. Staff and Planning Commission were really appreciative that the applicant went through a conceptual review with Planning Commission back in November in order to gain feedback on their proposal, which they used to bolster their application before making a formal approval, which we see here now. Some of these upgrades include incorporating the Delaware Blue Vein limestone throughout the entirety of the building, as well as using gooseneck style light fixtures and a higher standard elements to the design of the building elevations with fiber cement. In addition, the glass tube in which the cars will be washed is going to be an opaque glass as opposed to see-through, and they'll be using muted colors to blend with the design of the building. Planning Commission unanimously recommends approval, as does staff, for the proposed development, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that Madam Mayor and the members of council may have. Thank you.
Questions?
Fancy car wash.
Yes, it is.
I am too. I have no questions.
Any questions? There's three there's two other blue car washes, one in Lewis Center and one in
I
Powell.
was gonna say, that's the one down on 23 there, and
Are these all franchises? Are they separate, independently owned?
They're all one owner.
Carol went on that.
It's another family.
Oh, they own, okay.
what did you just say?
The Nutter family.
Oh, okay.
That's over.
Well, there's no further questions on council. How about if the applicants want to come forward at this time, if you have anything to add to the presentation? Or maybe council might have some questions for you.
Let me know if you need any of the previous slides.
I'm Steve Martin, an attorney with Manos Martin Pervin, 50 North Sandusky Street, Delaware, Ohio. And Mr. Nutter?
Barry Nutter, and I live 441 Kiesel Court in Powell.
We would like to thank staff and the Planning Commission, the way they have worked with us also. A substantial amount of work was done architecturally. Three reiterations after the first meeting with staff, and also had Coglin's Crossing architect involved in it because they have to approve all of the architecture. Bill, you want to explain a little bit about the difference in this car wash and why it has to be freestanding?
As you can see, it's a major change from what we originally did in Lewis Center. That was primarily just an all stucco building. And then the one that we built in Powell is basically an all brick building. That's what we originally had proposed to do here in Delaware as well. But in order to meet the area, we went ahead and hired the architect that was involved with Coglin's Crossing and modified it. And we went, like Stephen mentioned, we had about 3 rounds of changes that we made, and this is what we came up with, and we think it's a very attractive building, and it's going to fit the area very well.
It is not an insubstantial investment, and there will be a number of people employed. And part of the size and the configuration of it is due to this is a patented, and you want to explain the difference between this and the normal car wash?
Basically, what this building is it's a patented design out of a car wash manufacturer out of Michigan. And basically, when we buy the rights to the building, it's not a franchise or anything like that. It's just basically we're buying the building, and it's the use of the patent basically to use it. So we are planning on having about 15 employees here. Most of them will be part-time. We will have 2 or 3 full-time employees as well. But the difference between our car wash and most of the other car washes around is we do have an all-belt conveyor. We're the only car wash in Ohio or in central Ohio now that has an all-belt conveyor. Most all the other tunnel car washes have a traditional conveyor where it pushes or pulls your car through. Ours has a belt where your car rides right on top of it. There's a significant amount of extra cost to do that. But then for safety reasons, that's the way the car wash industry is going to go eventually here, just because there's auto braking issues, anti-collision systems on the newer cars, and you don't have that issue when you're on top of a belt. You do have it on a traditional conveyor, so it's just a much safer system to use.
And we have absolutely no objection to the conditions on either the conditional use permit. In fact, we like that one very much. And no problem at all with the conditions on the combined preliminary and final development plan. And we're very glad we were able to combine the preliminary and the final.
How much water is used? Is that the consumption of water? How many gallons is it? Say,
Generally,
depends
it's
on-
right around about 30 gallons of water, fresh water used per car. We do have a reclamation system as well that basically reclaims the water, and then we use that in the wash process as well. But 30 gallons of fresh water is used per car.
Okay. And that's just recycled through? You said,
It
or
goes
most
through-
of it, some of it is?
Yeah, we have underground storage tanks. There's about 6,000 gallons underground that's stored, and it goes through filter process.
Okay.
And then it's also injected with ozone for further treatment of the water.
Wow.
And then it's filtered and then reused.
Great. Impressive. Very impressive. Bill, it would be helpful, I think, just in connection with some of the conversation that's been occurring regarding Hull Drive in 23, if you could, Jordan, maybe you could pull the screen up that shows the overall project and what will trigger the improvements at the signal improvements. Bill, is that part of this? Is that not part of this?
I can give you really, I was going to talk about this with the whole drive at our next meeting, but I mean, I can talk real quickly since we're talking Collins Crossing. There are multiple improvements on 23 associated with the large project, not just because of the Blue Sky Car Wash. But there'll be a major intersection improvement at Hawthorne and 23, be a full intersection, mast arm design. The next intersection further north in front of, let's say, Wendy's will also be a reconfigured intersection combining the two intersections that are slightly offset. The old one with Stratford Heights Drive or Stratford Drive to the east will be one intersection right there. And that will also serve Collins Crossing, but it won't be a full intersection. In other words, you won't be able to go back and forth across 23, but you'll be able to turn on and off 23 right there. And there's also improvements down at Cotswold Drive associated with the Collins project also. And all those will start sometime around late April to early May and hopefully be finished in the midsummer, August, early September.
But access for the car wash can occur off the Spine Road from Meeker Way.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to have the intersection signal improvements.
Would be nice to have it though, but it doesn't.
Okay, right. I mean, it's, okay. Because that's a separate, I assume.
Yeah,
that's
Meeker
the
Way is fully
development.
signalized now and the Spine Road's open down to it. So there'll be full access provided to the car wash. And it's a destination. I think once people know where it's at and how to get to it, they'll be able to get to it during all phases of construction.
Any questions by council for the applicant?
I only have one comment. If you go back to the front elevation there, my question to the applicant is that a 57 Chevy? I thought it was either a 57 Chevy or maybe like a 56 Ford.
Yeah, the architect threw that in just for show. That's not my car.
It looks good.
Thank
The car or
the...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come forward at this time on this ordinance? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And what is the wish of council on these two items?
Move for approval of ordinance 18-120.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 18-121.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Good luck.
Welcome to Delaware. I cannot wait.
Hey, real quick, she just slided me something. You have a monthly membership fee?
Yep.
And it's unlimited?
It's phenomenal.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like,
There's car washes and then there's Blue Sky car washes. That's it.
It's really good. Okay, we're gonna, item 15 is as third reading of ordinance 18-22. I would like to table this at this time since we are down.
Make a motion that we table ordinance 18-122.
Wait, are we tabling it or are we?
We're
just
we're
taking it
we're
for another
going
reading.
another
Table fourth
reading.
reading
Yeah, we're
then.
not really
Okay,
done.
that's fine.
Okay.
Can you read it?
Sure, if you want to.
Ordinance number 18-122, an ordinance establishing the salary and benefits of the council clerk and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, this ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, safety, and welfare of the city. The emergency clause is required to enact the changes effective on December 26, 2018, which coincides with the new calendar year and the effective date of the management pay plan for 2019. Therefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. And item 16 is review and update.
Yeah, just to provide a little bit of a background, council considered this matter a few years ago. It's still something Troy Township trustees are interested in having an answer for, and that's really their request was that the city amend its annexation for utility policy for Troy Township residents that are being provided water service. In this case, there's not many of those. The instant issue before you is utility connections that were provided on Hills Miller Road in connection with easements that were needed for a large expansion of our transmission and distribution system. And at the time, the residents agreed that they would annex into the city after a 10-year period that is up this year, and when they're contiguous to city property. And Blake has provided kind of an update of where we are with this, and hopefully refresh your memory about what the township is requesting, so we can get some guidance from council. The township is one of the issues is the township is planning to repave Hills Miller Road. Does not want to invest in repaving the road if they know that it's going to be annexed and the city's going to maintain it. It's been 10 years. This is pretty much the northern limits of the city's growth boundary. But for us to say that area to the north will never develop is it's kind of hard. Right now, since I've been here and even longer, it hasn't, not much, that the growth boundary is really at Hills Miller Road. So with that said, I'll just have Blake just kind of walk through what his update provides, and then we can have some discussion.
All right, Madam Mayor, other members, as Tom said, this is something that you guys have had before you a couple years ago. January of 2016, I see it here. Darren and Tom presented it to you. Just in August, we met again with Doug Price. He asked to meet with us just to reopen the conversations on this topic, specifically for Hills Miller, but as a whole, it is a larger issue of all residents within. Troy Township feels all residents within the influence of Henry Wellfield. He would like consideration for all of them to be able to use city services without the obligation to ever really need to annex. But this conversation does deal with Hills Miller specifically. So the city ordinance is up there, and this just says that upon getting city services of utilities, that they are required within 60 days to become or to petition for annexation if they are contiguous. Resolution 822, which was passed in April of 2018, waived that, allowing them a 10-year grace period. Whether or not they became contiguous, they had 10 years to file for annexation. The 10-year grace period is ending, and so this topic does need considered. This map here shows, you can see in the light gray hatched area, that is incorporated area of the city. The tan hatched are the 12 properties that took water service when the transmission line was put in. They're the properties of consideration right now. You can see that there is a tiny strip there that is a small driveway there on the bottom left side of the picture. Whether this constitutes it being contiguous is, highly debatable, I guess. And then on the right, those 4 properties, that actually does not make a connection to any part of the city at the moment. There is a span there where the property lines don't exactly line up. So this first bullet point I actually pulled out of the reasoning that was Resolution 822, in which they're given the 10-year grace period was written, and it stated that the area generally developed in a way that is not contemplated in the city zoning code, and annexation would compromise the rural character of the area. Something to consider, even after the 10-year grace period, this is an area that doesn't necessarily fit into the confines of what we do at the city. There are other services that we would have to provide to these houses if we annex them: refuse pickup, recycling pickup, snow plowing, possible street maintenance. The population density in the area still doesn't really facilitate us properly administering these services to them. Bill could probably weigh in on that better, but this would be a hard area for us to serve without any other developments having happened out there. There is another 45 or so acres out there that could be developed. That may help the numbers game on our end, but at the moment, this would be a hard area, I feel, for many city services. And then the last note, just this, while we are talking about Hills Miller, Troy Township does request that all residents in the area of Penny Wellfield be able to connect to city water without annexation. Do you have more to add on that, Tom?
No, I just think that's a point that's debatable, and I wouldn't advise council to make a decision based upon that. We, years ago, addressed the Penry Road Wellfield issues by providing them compensation for the issues regarding their wells. Yes, we did.
What was that?
I think it was $4,000, and they were able to then use that money to tie into Delco. So there was a very exhaustive study that was done to determine those wells that were affected, impacted, and who really wanted to avail themselves of the offer that the city made at the time. So that was pretty much, that's been settled.
And their proximity to the well field was actually, how close they were to it increased how much they were paid by the city. So it was graduated.
Right.
And then everyone took that?
Yes. Yeah, most everyone did, I think. Yeah. And, so I think really that issue's been, I think, settled as far as the city's concerned. The other issue really is these residents along Hills Miller Road, and how do you want to handle that? And what's the mechanism? What's the right mechanism for doing it? Annexing it into the city, as Blake points out, it's kind of an anomaly for us because of the way it's laid out. I think bigger picture you need to consider is north of Hills Miller Road, Oak Haven Golf Course at some point could, there was overtures made to the city years ago to have that piece of property come into the city, and then the property north of that, the Shafter property, whether that occurs is it's just hard to know at this point. But for us to bring this into the city today, I don't think makes a lot of sense. And really that's kind of the issue that's before us. But they, and I know we had talked about this before in terms of what you could either extend the agreement out another 10 years if you'd like, or you could just indicate right now they're not contiguous, so there'd be no requirement to tie in. There's not contiguity.
Just to add some background on this issue, obviously you're discussing the 12, well, there's three groups of people you're discussing. The 12, was it 12, Blake? The 12 houses that currently have the city's water who have a requirement to annex. There's the other people along Hills Miller or in Troy Township who may want to get water, who never did a deal with us to give us the right of way, so they don't have water right now. And then the third group of people is basically everybody outside the city who right now is not allowed to use our water unless they annex per our code. If you want to address that third group, we would have to do a change to our codified ordinances. Second group, probably the same thing as the options are here that they've laid out. The first group, the people who currently have existing water, I don't think you'd have to change any code if you said, I'm not really in a hurry to annex them because as you can see from that slide, we could simply say, I don't think you're contiguous right now, so that kind of kicks that issue down the road. Or as Tom said, we could work out another extension on the agreement and say, hey, we don't see anything happening X number of years, we'll do another agreement with you. That's probably more complicated because then we have to try to record it and make sure that's defensible. But the simplest thing would be if you said policy-wise, we don't really need to serve that area, we don't need to annex it. I think we could write them something that says, right now, you're not contiguous, so there's not really a threat right now of having an annex. And that might provide them some comfort.
Go back to that one slide showing us the maps. So you're saying because of the one on the south side, you could argue that it's contiguous?
I'll get up. That little.
Yeah, I see which one is that.
It's a driveway.
Yeah, it's a driveway.
Yeah. And really, it's a driveway that goes up to a road that isn't, I don't know if that dedicated road right away is the township, so it's, doesn't necessarily touch the other properties.
So, we, if we wanted to aggressively enforce our annexation on these cases, it's arguably defensible that we could use that little flagpole on those, but I think if we wanted to decide that it wasn't enough for us to want to do it, we could say, hey, we don't consider this sufficient for us to trigger our requirement to annex at this time, but we reserve the right to do it if the property around there does annex, because then you don't want to give them the complete waiver and then have a reverse donut hole like we have in some other properties, I would think. But
does that set a precedence then from, if we say that it's not contiguous, because quite often we've all seen these annexation things, quite often many communities would utilize that. So
balloons on a string.
Yeah, so now down the road and they find that there's a massive oil field underneath there, and we say, now we want you to annex into the city. Do we have the land to stand on? We say, no, that really isn't, we're ignoring that. That doesn't really apply. I mean, what's the precedence that we're setting there?
depending on how we wrote whatever we decided, if we said we don't feel that this driveway alone is enough for us to trigger our requirement to annex at this time, to answer your question, Councilman Hellinger, I don't think we can then go back later and say, oh, now it does. I don't necessarily think that that would keep us from doing balloons on the string in other situations, because we can word it to say, in this situation, we don't think it's enough. But in your example, if for some reason we changed our mind, we really wanted it, we'd have to kind of reverse ourselves, and I think that would cause us some problems. As to the other properties, they're not contiguous by any stretch right now. So we would then also have a situation where we'd be requiring I'm not good at math, but 9 that kind of touch, but the 4 that don't would kind of be off for the time being. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And practically speaking, if you did that, you've got half the road that's in the city. It's just the implications of that are.
I'm not in favor of changing the policy myself.
Makes no sense.
So you're saying you want them to annex?
Yeah.
I don't want one more road to take care of.
Yeah.
We can't take care of what we have, police, fire, everything. When I first met with Doug 2 years ago, he threw out the idea of annexing when sewer went in rather than water. They still pay 1.5 times. But when sewer, because chances are we're not going to even, I don't know if we'll ever sewer that part. Have sewer up there that high.
Well, right now, there's no, I don't think.
When are they looking to do the road?
I think they'd
like to pay it
this year. Yeah.
Right.
They wanted to do it last year. Yeah. They held off on it.
I mean, do you think this would be coming up if they weren't going to be talking about paving this road?
Well, their 10 years is up. That's why he approached
And the
it.
10 years ends in this year, so it's kind of a perfect storm of probably the road and the fact that it's 19 is when technically that agreement comes up.
And they actually started in 16, so we're on almost year 3 and they still don't have an answer.
If we annex that, what would our road responsibilities be? Would it be the whole length of road right in front of those 9 properties, or how many properties there are there to the left?
I mean, technically, and Bill can chime in, but it would be the parts are in the city would be the parts in front of the orange But usually when we have those situations, we work out an agreement, so it's not plow, pick up the plow, don't pick up the plow, like in other areas, we work out, only with road maintenance. we try
Well,
to work out.
typically with a situation like this too, with the county engineer, we don't annex half of a road. We'd probably annex the properties, but not half the road. So most of this road would still probably not be within the city, even after the annexations. That makes it particularly difficult on the western lot of 12 because the contiguous driveway part may not actually be contiguous.
Did you say that if they annexed, we would not?
We wouldn't want to, we wouldn't annex necessarily, we wouldn't annex to the center of the road because we want the whole road or none of the road, but not half the road. And that's been how we worked with the county engineer.
The Carolyn's concern then.
Yeah.
That
So,
would be like similar to what the cluster we had down there in Stratford Road in front of the
Yes.
performance, right?
right.
Half the road is still in the county.
And that's why we try to straighten those issues out now when we find those. That's why we somewhat have an agreement not to annex to road center lines anymore because it creates a real headache as to how to take care of that in the future.
And Bill, in addition to road center lines, though, you also have situations like this where you might have the whole road, but there's like gaps because it comes in and out of
Correct.
the city.
Right.
That's what I was referring to. We don't like doing half the road this way, but sometimes when you're driving along the road, it goes in and out of the city.
We have been able to effectively work with townships in the county. Pollock Road's a good example where everyone paid their pro rata share to fix Pollock Road just based on the square footage that was within our different jurisdictions. But we try not to get into these situations and, into the future, including this situation where there's only one property or two properties that would actually have continuity across the entire road. That's on the eastern end. The rest of it largely would still be outside the city. So I guess what I'm saying is Troy Township should probably go ahead with their road project regardless of the decision here. So I wouldn't be in support of annexing partial pavement.
So here we are, almost 3 years later. Does that constitute a contiguity? And if it does, so you're gonna have half the road that's in and the other half that isn't, and this is kind of a mess. It would kind of result in a mess.
So what's your recommendation?
Well, I mean, I just either extend it out, because practically speaking, nothing's happened out there. This is not an issue where there's 200 acres to the north and all these properties are up for redevelopment as part of that project. These are rural, the rural developed lots, and bring them into the city is from Dave's not here tonight, but the zoning issues you've got zoning issues as well. We just don't get a lot of these. It's just kind of an odd situation that we find ourselves in. In terms of that many homes on
Sure.
that type of a road that provided us easements for this water line.
The reason they got the water is because of,
That was the,
We were looping our system. I mean,
Right.
that ties into the back of Lantern Chase from the
that they
north.
came to us, we did it.
Correct.
right, and that, yeah.
Ordinance 913.2C, the ordinance you're referring to, it does give you guys and Tom the ability in specific cases where it's to the best benefit of the city to go around, to waive or to momentarily waive the requirements for annexation. If it is not in the best benefit of the city for these properties to come in, you are allowed to.
So Tom, Mike, what I'm hearing is you're not in favor of them annexing into the city.
Under these circumstances, no. I mean, I just don't know it's debatable whether any of them are contiguous to the city right now,
Right.
even though the 10 years is up.
But still allowing them to get city water though.
Yeah, because they're still, that's what they're getting today. They're paying the surcharge. I'm just not sure what we get by in trying to say that they're contiguous and only bring in half, 8 properties to the west.
What would the downside be to doing what you said, extend that 10 years?
Well,
We're
we
not
could.
saying they never will, because who knows what could happen. The whole area around them could develop, and we don't want to have another island. We got plenty of those as it exists. One of our problems in years past is we'd have these kind of arrangements and they get lost in the shuffle. And because we've got other areas where arguably they agreed to annex, and are they, aren't they? What's the trigger? But if we stay on top of it, in 10 years, the same discussions had, and nothing's changed, you're still not saying they don't have to annex. The other issues that the township's requesting has a lot of policy implications and, in a lot of precedent-setting type of situation. Darren, you said you were a little concerned about just doing another 10-year. I didn't know if there was a.
The only concern I have about doing another 10-year thing is these things become increasingly.
Keeping track of it.
It's keeping track, they become increasingly difficult to enforce, and I sometimes don't, the new person buys the property and they say, I didn't know about it, I didn't agree with you, so that's what happened with Green Lawn, so we can try to, maybe record something on the property, so if
I
it
think we
sells.
record it.
And I'll probably be the only, except maybe council members, I'll probably be the only one still here in 10 years, so I know I won't have anyone to blame for entering the agreement, because it'll be me that did it. But long-term agreements are just hard to track and enforce, but it doesn't, we're not in any worse position than we are now. I still think it's difficult to enforce. I mean, we'd have to, if they said, no, we're not going to annex, even though we agreed, we'd have to either take them to court or, I guess, shut off their water, neither of which is something we probably want to do. So I don't think we're any worse off, other than, more time and same issues coming up.
That's an interesting, the recording, how would you go about, I know you can record things. Is there a lawful way that we can record, and they have to agree that there's this attached to that deed? Is this agreement that's referenced, and if and when the property is in transition,
As long as it's filed.
it's a part of the record?
Yeah.
And arguably ought to be doing that in other situations too, to not just make sure we can keep track of it, to make sure the property owner has been given notice of sorts.
If there's a 50-unit development, I would rather not try to figure it out, but for 12 properties, we would just, if we did an agreement, we would probably enter an agreement with each owner. We'd have a form, they'd sign it, we just record it on the property, so when they sell it, person buying it, when they do their title search, will see, oh, when you buy this property, you might have to annex in 10 years. So it would protect us better than probably where we are now, honestly.
I'm okay with that.
Him too.
We could probably write something up for the next meeting. It should take council authorization to amend the original agreement to provide for the mechanism that would have to be put in place. I think that will be helpful for the township. It doesn't completely answer their request, but at least it addresses this. I think the broader request is too broad, and that would set precedent that we don't want to set, so.
Yeah, and since obviously they're on here, but they might ask questions, is a general consensus that council's not interested in allowing new people in that area not in the city to tap into the water? Because that was request part 2, and I think if we have a clear answer on that, that might answer that too.
That would be a no, right? I mean,
Right, newer people, but I would, there are other residents on Hills Miller Road, on those 2 properties that are kind of in between.
Well, that's what I'm asking, because that's a policy question.
I think
as
they
opposed to a-
elected not to take the water, but the question would be, if you do this, they might come back and say, we're interested now. So that would have to be, it's a good question.
And that changes the map. What if all the people on the south side of Hills Miller say, hey, why not? Now the contiguous issue, it's
that's a
there.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you just limit it to the
ones
people that have the
yeah.
current agreements.
Yep. That's a very good point.
But that's what I would do, because if you do agreements with the people on the south side, they are contiguous, and that seems kind of weird, and then they'll connect the people on the north, and now maybe you do want to grab the whole road, so.
So we could have legislation before you at an upcoming meeting, probably the meeting on the 11th, because we have a joint meeting with the schools, or is Doug coming to the next meeting? On the
He was going to
25th?
try and come on the 28th. Or whatever that date-
28th,
date is.
okay. We can have some legislation that would. So the idea is extend the agreement for an additional 10 years, the same terms.
Or until it becomes contiguous.
But that would still be in place.
Yeah, until, one of those guys over there on the right that isn't in the city now decides to take water and annex in the city, then boom.
Right.
Yeah, but I thought we were saying they couldn't decide to take water.
Well, but they
If
would
they
have,
annex,
they would
they
have
can.
to say, we want to be annexed into the city. And then that would then extend the city to the boundaries. And then those, let's say those other four would have to go.
Hey, Blake, what is that?
Let's
what is
play that out.
What is that
Yeah.
square, what is that rectangle next to the Oakhurst development, the big one?
That's
Yeah.
development land waiting to, there's about 45 acres there
So
between the
Can you
two.
get a deal where they can get water and sewer without annexation?
So to George's point, I think if those two parcels go in, that really is a pretty strong
Mhm.
link, whereas right now there isn't. So we'll work on something that kind of captures that as well.
What is this sewer proximity? I know we talked about north of here and how we would sewer that.
It's right there,
It's right there.
right there
so-
and there.
And that may be the other thing, if some of those properties north, and they had problems with their water quality, it's why they wanted to get into the city's water line. If they have issues with their on-site septic systems, and they're looking at investing, who knows, a bunch of money, they may be, coming to the city saying, is there a way? Then you're getting into, if we're providing water and sewer and everything else.
So Darren, the recap would be what here? We would,
My recap is, before I tell you exactly how I'm going to do it, I would like to work on something for hopefully the next meeting that would grant relief to the 12 houses that are currently on there in such a way that protects the city, but gives the township some degree of certainty that they're not going to have to annex shortly so they can feel more comfortable paving the road. I don't know if it's going to be a flat 10 years or if it's going to be this many years, a shorter number of years guaranteed. And then if you're contiguous, I'll have to noodle through all the hypotheses and the way you do it, but something that will protect them for the time being, but still protect us as well. Is that a fair summary, Tom? I don't want to say just 10 years blanket, because as you said, if that thing develops tomorrow, we might want to do something shorter. I think I'm throwing out a number, if we said 5 years, I think we can live for 4 more years of, and that annex tomorrow, I think we could live with the other 4 years before they had to do it. But I'll just think about all the things and come up with some proposal for council next meeting. Now that we know what we're trying to accomplish together, I think.
is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, am I doing this tonight? We don't have to have that work session on 4.
And the chamber too.
I know.
Sure, would that take, like 10 minutes?
Well, we would have the township trustee here.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, he wants to come to the next meeting,
Okay.
so whether he does or not. What's wrong? Okay, item 17 is city manager's report.
Yes, Hull Drive, the pilot project will be discussed on the 11th. It's currently on hold. I think there was some email communication regarding recommendation to consider the improvements that they're going to make on 23 first. But Bill will be prepared to provide kind of an overview of where we stand at the council's meeting on the 11th. Elaine sent out a notice regarding a possible retreat on the 16th, location to be determined. That would just be a few hours in the morning. That's a Saturday. And really it's to kind of set council's goals for the year and kind of revisit some issues that have come up in the past. You'll be getting an EMS survey from Chief Donahue. He's part of a working group that's taking a look at EMS services in Delaware County. I'm involved in that as well, and I'll be updating you about that in my biweekly report later this week. But there's a survey that will be coming from John that he'll be asking you to respond to. We received a $20,000 grant for EV charging stations. So Chris Jones's initiative a couple of years ago has come to fruition. There will be a supplemental that will be coming before you. We have to appropriate those dollars, but AEP has provided up to $20,000 for 2, Bill, and these will be placed in the William Street parking lot. If that works, We'll be taking a look at replicating that perhaps in Franklin Street, in the Franklin Street parking lot, and in other surface lots as well. School board joint meeting on the 28th. Is it the 28th?
Yes, sir.
28th. And they will be meeting, the school board will be meeting at 6 o'clock at Willis, then walking over here at 7. So the question is, what kind of business do we want to do? We want to try to start our meeting early and then have a joint meeting with him at 7. Would that work for city council? We're trying to keep that agenda light that evening. So
This month, 20th?
Yes, I
I know you're out, Chris, but
we're trying to decide if we need to move it up.
Yeah.
So we can have the other one at 7, rather than wait and start ours at 8.
I mean, you could start your meeting early, get your business out of the way, then meet with them jointly at 7, and after that, you're finished. It will take some time. I mean, I know they have some issues they want to update you on, and I know there's some discussion regarding some of their space needs, in particular having to do with Schultz Elementary School, and so there will be some discussion about that. So I'll have Elaine follow up with you.
Well, I'm
What could
from
you?
here right now. It was 6 o'clock work for you, the rest of you?
Sure.
So
That's
just
good.
send a message out to Jim and Kent
To mark their calendars, right?
for 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
No work.
staff is going to be happy about it.
No work
No
session.
executive session then.
No, if you
I don't
have
think-
executive, we'll
We'd
do
have
that
it
at the end.
Yeah.
No work session on the 4th. Chamber dinner. So if you're interested in the chamber dinner, let Elaine know. Carolyn and I will be doing the State of the City. It's kind of a warm up tomorrow with the Board of Realtors, and then the Chamber of Commerce on Thursday. And electric switchover. All of those poles that you see out there are going to be in the next week and a half will be taken down. We will be doing some of that switchover tomorrow. And you did get something regarding Cohatch earlier today, so hopefully you'll be able to attend their open house. And I will be out of the office Friday through Martin Luther King Day. That's what I've got. Thank you.
So Bill, how soon is the dumpster going to get moved into that little area that they put in? Looks like it's done. We really need parking.
As soon as they are 100% out of the area working. We just don't want to move it back into there, then be in their way as they're trying to finish the electric changeovers. Oh, point taken.
Council comments? Mr. Jones?
I have, but I just lost it.
And Jim, we'll come back to you.
Circle back to me, see
I
if
will.
I come up.
If possible, if we do get word that we're canceling a public hearing, if we would be able to put that out on the website to maybe save people from
What time did we
unnecessary
get this?
trip down.
12:30.
Well, this
12:30.
this
I mean,
afternoon, yes.
Just because I feel bad that
Yeah.
we want citizens to come and speak, but we don't want them to get annoyed with us that, hey, we knew at noon we were canceling this, but just a thought.
Makes sense. We may not be able to reach those
Right.
folks, but at least the people who follow Facebook and Twitter would have seen it.
Okay, anything else?
That's it. Mr. Rohr?
My only bang on the drum is we still need to not lose sight of our road funding requirements. And we still need to consider how we're going to fund our roads. I mean, the whole drive thing is, kind of brings that up from a standpoint of people want improvements or they want modifications. Obviously, we don't have enough money to even do what we need to do today. People complain about excess congestion on residential streets. And of course, Bill can go right back and say, well, if we had an expanded road network that was able to move traffic, you know, we could do that. So I think we really need to, I think our citizens do not believe that we need the money because we're unwilling to go back and bang the drum at every time the polls are there and say, we need the money. That's what schools do, and it finally passes. But we do it, and then we wait 6 or 10 years and we do it again. Personally, before I'm off council in 2.5 years, I would like to see our road funding resolved and not kicked down the road like councils have for the last, since 2000, whether it's at 2, 3, whenever it was. So we really need to, we owe to our citizens, and we really need to do something with regards to either, and if the residents won't pass it, then I say we take away the income tax credit. We'll get the money one way or the other. And people will complain, who cares? You know, if you want to live in a good community, you need money to be able to do it. And for all those Facebook keyboard warriors out there that think that we have Fort Knox and golden toilet seats, you know, obviously we all know that's not the case. And that's just a matter of education, but we need to get funding. And our inaction speaks volumes of our unwillingness to actually step up and take a strong, needed position, because that's what the city needs. That's all I got. Time to go have a beer.
Go ahead. Well, interesting points raised there. Part of me thinks that our citizens are driving on the roads that they voted to drive on. The roads that they told us they were satisfied with because we came up with a solution that they said wasn't a great solution. I don't know that, I'm not even close to the point of talking about rolling back any kind of credits without citizen feedback, voting. I'm not even close to making a decision like that. I think that we need to open up the dialogue and find out how we missed the mark, where we missed the mark, and how we can get closer to the mark before we go to any kind of alternative solutions.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't disagree with that, but since 2016, we could have been in front of the voters 4 more times with variations. And I think it's pretty straightforward. The biggest thing was it was permanent. They don't trust us, limited duration. Second thing, you know, keep it simple. Don't give them 20 things. So we're gonna fix our current roads. We're not worrying about expanding our network right now. Build that trust. But, you know, we haven't done anything. And we've sat there and we said, well, we need to talk to the people. Wow. You know, when we talked about this prior to the November election, oh, we're going to see what, you know, whoever those municipalities were in Columbus were going to do, because they had citizen engagement and they both went down in flames. I'm not saying we don't need citizen engagement, but I don't think we can forestall taking action just because, well, I didn't hear what Betty Lou over here had to say. Betty Lou's one vote. And, you know, you have to look at the bigger picture. And we need to make a usable solution that at least we can get, you know, 50.1% of the vote in favor of, whatever that is. But just kicking the can down the road, I think is just a true disservice. But we don't know, because we haven't done anything for a couple of years. I think we need to put it back out there. If that doesn't work, you know, re-massage it, put it back out again. Put it back out again. But then somewhere have there in your timeline say, you know what, if this thing goes 4 times and still nobody votes, you know, we can't get the votes, well, then this is our alternative. And that's when you get that ultimatum. We need the money. We need, our roads are continuing to go to heck. And if we don't do it, you know, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So we get that final ultimatum. We can either fund it here or we can get the money here. It doesn't take, you know, we can rescind that tax credit today if we wanted to. We do legislation. It doesn't require a vote. You know, it requires our vote. It doesn't require a resident's vote.
Right, but if the people don't want us to do that.
But again, it's like you can either pay me now or pay me later. And I think that's where we're coming down to. And when you listen to social media, listen to people out there, you know, it's getting worse and worse. We know the schools are going to come back for a building levy. We know, people out there are already complaining because, they got their property reevaluated. Everybody's complaining about that. And they're complaining about the school levy that increased their taxes. Now the school's going to come back and want for more money for buildings because they're out of space again. And, we can't say, well, we won't do it this year because the school's going to be there. I think we just need to belly up and say, may the best man win. And you know what? Because the schools, if they don't get it, they'll be back. If they don't get it in the spring, they'll be back at probably a special in the fall, and then they'll be back at the regular in the fall. And they'll just keep doing it until they get it. And I think that's where we need to be, because I don't think people think we genuinely need the money, because we only ask once, and then we turn tail and we walk away and say, oh, well, okay, I'm sorry. I won't ask you for any more money.
But I think most people saw when the levy didn't go through, we didn't do any of the connective roads. That we didn't do anything we said we were going to do. Forget the maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they see. None of that got done.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it depends on what we really need. Do we need maintenance? Do we need connectivity? What do we?
Well, and I think that's it. I think you can make a point for either or all of those. But I think, and again, the feedback I heard from people it was too convoluted. We tried to do something in every ward, and then, when you're over there, in Joe's old neighborhood over in Cotswold, you knock on the door and say, yeah, I voted against that thing. I don't want that connection over to Stratford Road. My road's big enough of a pass-through road. And, so here we thought we were doing something in that ward to help them, and it just, it was unintended consequences.
Why don't we start with a citizen committee that makes a recommendation to us about what the citizens want? What about forming a task force of, volunteer? We can have city staff work with some citizens and say, these are the priorities of the citizens. And because I heard a lot about a bypass, but as soon as the reality of the actual dollar figures are presented, I think that they would back off that recommendation pretty quickly, the same way that we have.
I hear bypasses all the time.
Yeah.
Yes. A guy called me for 45 minutes the other day and told me how we needed to build a bypass. I said, how are we going to pay for this? Get federal money, get state money. It's like, why are you bothering fixing the point? Just get a bypass. That'll solve all your problems.
We had talked about doing what they did in Powell, and I think putting together that task force that took a look not just at the road issue, but just how the city spends its money. Because I think there is that strain, that common thread that, well, if the city knew how to spend its money differently and better and prioritized, you could come up with the $2 million a year that you need to fund your road maintenance program. So that's kind of builds on what you were saying, Lisa. But we're kind of stuck.
Guess we know this will be on the retreat topic.
We're just kind of stuck, and I'd say, yeah, we really need to think about what you want to do. But what we don't want to do is we waited from 2003 until 2016 to allow that amount of time to elapse. I don't think is right. So.
Okay. With that, I'll look for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And we're adjourned at 8:44.
Hey, that's a little under 50%.
Yeah.